So good afternoon, everybody. Once again, my name is Melinda Vick. I am from the Vocation, Education, Employment, and Reentry Unit within the Office of Probation and Correction Alternatives at DCJS. I'd like to welcome you all to our Lunch and Learn, and this particular topic is one that is near and dear to my heart. It's community correction wellness. So today, just a few housekeeping things. I just wanted to let you know that you are all muted upon entry. We are going to have a section at the end for questions and answers, but if you could stay on mute until that time, we'd greatly appreciate it just to get through the presentation. And if you have any questions, comments, or if you're having any technological issues, please utilize the chat feature and we will be able to assist you through the chat feature. So today I am excited and happy to say that our Deputy Commissioner and Director, Robert Macarone, is here, and he's going to do some welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Melinda, and good morning. I should say good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. We have quite a crew, almost 50, I guess 56 people online, and I know some sites, we have multiple attendees. I really want to extend my appreciation to Melinda Vick, Dan Robitello for co-hosting this event. So many people were involved, but clearly they were the leaders, and also to Gladys Larson for agreeing to speak today. Officer wellness is so important every day, not only during COVID. I think certainly COVID-19 has exacerbated the stresses placed on each of us with respect to family in the workplace. In some cases, it's blurred the lines, and I would suggest or submit that, in fact, it has resulted in greater stress and anxiety for many, even working from home remotely, where that is possible. I know that most of the probation departments are returning to the department and scheduling office visits with clients. I know we have community correction agencies on today that are doing the same. So both probation and alternatives to incarceration community correction agencies, I think, are returning to the workplace. At the same time, families have childcare considerations, young mothers. So there's a lot of stresses competing for everyone's time. And this is something that is important. We mention it at every grade of the fundamentals. And I know that Nicole Aldi and her team are working pretty intensively on updating the fundamentals of community corrections curriculum. So we're going to be returning to providing community corrections training as well as fundamentals of probation practice. At each of those sessions, I always talk about the importance of self-care. We can't be helpful to others, to clients, to individuals in need if we're not taking care of ourselves. A lot of the stress, our jobs are stressful. We're dealing with people who are in stressful situations. Many of them are struggling with addiction, drug and alcohol. Many of them are suffering, continue to suffer from mental illness. So they are presenting themselves to probation departments and to alternatives to incarceration programs each and every day, wrestling with those things, with those addictions, with those illnesses. And consequently, there's a lot of secondary stress, I think. People who are interacting with these individuals every day. In fact, some of that stress is being committed to them. It doesn't only take a critical incident. It doesn't necessarily require a critical incident or a probation officer drawing their service weapon and having to use it, or even getting involved in an office scuffle, which is probably far more common. While those things are certainly upsetting and critically stressful, it can be just normal interactions with clients day after day and building up the stresses. So I want to welcome all of you to this forum. I'm going to listen in as well. I do want to mention that OPCA has been working pretty intensively over the last 2 years. Danielle Brindisi has headed up that effort with respect to doing officer training. And we did the first session class of 30. I believe it was 16 departments. And we're going to repeat it. And I will say that future trainings will also be offered to the ATI and community corrections programs as well. One of the most critical elements of dealing with stress is peer support. People who can identify with you, who understand you, understand the job most, can be most influential in one, identifying early stress, and two, coming to the support of the probation officer or the community correction professional. So I'm going to listen and thank you for attending today's session. I see we're up to 64, so take it away, Melinda. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. With me today, actually, my co-host is Alden Saddlemeyer. He's from the ATI unit, and he'll be presenting a little further into this presentation, but he and I are happy to deliver this program today. So once again, thank you for coming.
Yeah, so let me jump in. My apologies, Alden, for not mentioning you. I see Dan that listed as a co-host as well. But Alden, thank you. I appreciate that. And I also want to mention that Alden has expressed his intention to retire in a date coming up in the next month or so. Alden's had an outstanding career in public service. We spoke a couple weeks ago. And as many of you know, he's been a tremendous addition to the ATI unit. But he also had an entirely separate career as a colonel in the military and fought in the Mideast. And so he's a war veteran and someone we have always treasured having part of our staff. So, Alden, we wish you well in many future years of health and happiness in your retirement.
Thanks much, Bob.
I'm sad to hear that Alden's leaving. So today's objectives, we're going to identify 3 possible adverse effects of workplace stress. We're going to describe the stress response system. We're going to identify signs of stress and the situations that lead to stress. And we're going to describe 3 strategies for reducing stress and how they are beneficial. As it was already noted, that FCC and FPP provide a much deeper dive into wellness and self-care, but this is just a lunch and learn, so this is going to be a brief overview of wellness today. So workplace stress. We're going to start this out with a poll. So if you're hooked up to the computer, in a second, you're going to have a poll pop up. Should be to the right of your screen. And the question is, what causes you the most stress? Role ambiguity, meaning risk management versus risk reduction. Role conflict, meaning punishment versus rehabilitation. Role overload, such as system demands like paperwork versus the needs of the person you're serving. Challenges to personal and professional integrity, such as lack of support from colleagues or lack of support from family, or just difficulties managing personal and professional boundaries. You know, taking your work home with you at night. So if you want to go ahead. And as responses are coming in, probably just about finished up. "30 seconds left. And once we conclude the poll, I'm going to show you the results. Hopefully. And there we go. So it looks like for the most part, everybody on this particular Lunch and Learn is role overload, followed by a tie between challenges to personal and professional integrity and difficulties managing personal and professional boundaries, the lowest being role conflict and role ambiguity. So, great. So we want to let you know that community corrections can be an extremely rewarding field. During the course of your work, you have the opportunity to witness individual successes and positive change within people. Your work in this setting can also be extremely demanding, and you're likely to face a number of different challenges that can impact your personal and professional well-being. So our stressors are personal, and to prevent the negative consequences associated with stress, it's critical that you become aware of what your actual triggers are. We're going to focus on this in more detail in the coming slides. So what does the research tell us? There can be two forms of occupational stress that community corrections professionals experience. One is systematic workplace stress, role ambiguity, which is the risk management versus reduction, the role conflict, the role overload, challenges to personal and professional integrity, and difficulties managing personal and professional boundaries. The second is traumatic workplace stress. That's primary traumatic stress where an individual experiences an extreme or life-threatening event, or secondary traumatic stress, which is where professionals working with high stress and trauma-exposed individuals can experience trauma symptoms that result from constant exposure to graphic accounts of victimization or the occurrence of challenging caseload events such as probationer or a client on your caseload engaging in a violent crime that you then have to experience with them. The expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is an unrealistic as expecting us to be able to walk to water without getting wet. Naomi Remen. In working with high stress and trauma-exposed clients, this can impact our professional life and increase workplace stress. Many community correction professionals experience some type of vicarious trauma or the emotional residue of exposure that you have from working with people as you are hearing their trauma stories and become witnesses to the pain, fear, and terror that trauma survivors have endured. So by all expenses, their trauma then becomes your trauma because you're experiencing it with them. Outcomes linked to systematic and traumatic workplace stress might include the following: health problems, including diabetes, heart disease, unhealthy lifestyle choices, such as resorting to alcohol or substance use, family conflict and distress, and taking your work home can then impact the family, emotional exhaustion and burnout, where you just don't want to get up in the morning anymore, trauma symptoms, job ineffectiveness, high rates of staff turnover and reports of dissatisfaction, increased risk of suicide, and staff performance difficulties. Researchers have begun to look more closely at workplace stress and the impact on physical, emotional, medical, professional, and family life. This has become a serious topic all across the workplaces in America. Let's talk about some good news. I want to make the point that researchers have discovered that we can in fact prevent and mitigate workplace stress by building resilience and responding to stress. We have to recognize it and then deal with it in an appropriate manner. Workplace settings are more aware than ever of the stressors faced by community corrections professionals and strategies to help staff cope with stress, and staff are resilient and can learn to recognize and respond to stress and then build resilience to that. Over millions of years, human beings developed a complex nervous system, including the brain and thousands of neural pathways in the body to deal with the day-to-day demands of living and staying alive, starting with running from dinosaurs to now running from criminals. Our body reacts in the same way. Our nervous system exists within three parts of the brain framework. The autonomic nervous system is our control center. It keeps us alive and protects us. It is working with us every day and every minute to deal with moment-to-moment survival needs. It regulates all the basic functions of our body, such as heart rate, breathing, and digestion outside of our conscious awareness. It is also a stress response system and regulates how we react to awareness. and how we react to changing conditions in our internal and external environment. The ANS has two main branches. The sympathetic nervous system, SNS, is our fight, flight, freeze system. It helps us stay alert and engaged. It also helps us to mobilize and respond to emergencies and threats. The parasympathetic nervous system, PNS, is our rest and digest system. It helps us to calm down, especially after a stressful situation. Think of a car. The SNS is our gas pedal. It helps us mobilize and take action. The PNS is our brake. It helps us to slow things down and relax. This slide demonstrates the natural rhythm of a healthy nervous system. The green line depicts what happens on a normal day. We might face a stressor and the SNS is activated, but then it settles down again, and this can happen many times on any given day. When our nervous system is functioning well, our stress response system permits us to manage stress and move quickly from a state of dysregulation to calm or homeostasis and regulation. Our goal is to maintain this regulation. In a regulated state, we can attend to day-to-day tasks and stressful events effectively and without feeling overwhelmed. We can face a stressful event, mobilize to address it, and then return to balance and regulation as quickly as possible. So let's review the major sources of stress. Environment. The environment can affect our stress, whether it be the weather, pollen, which affects allergies, noise, traffic, and pollution. Social stressors such as deadlines, financial problems, demands of time and attention from loved ones, coworkers, and other workplace challenges. Physiological, such as illness, aging, injuries, lack of exercise, poor nutrition, or lack of sleep. Thoughts and cognition, our perceptions of events, what's going on around us and how we're thinking about it and how we're dealing with it. How much stress is too much? There are many types of stress that can activate the human stress response. While some stress is good and mobilizes us to take action, too much can have an adverse effect on our mind and body. We have to be mindful of the different types of stress on our plates. It's up to us individually to recognize when we're experiencing too much stress, and we really need to listen to our body. We can all learn the warning signs by monitoring our window of tolerance to recognize when your limits have been reached and work to address them so that they do not have a long-term impact. Resilience. Research suggests that individuals that are more resilient have more internal coping strategies and external support. They're more resilient and they're better prepared to manage workplace stress. Our primary goal in this section is to explore opportunities offered in the workplace to build resilience. Resilience is the presence of internal and external resources that help someone bounce back from stress. So some different things to do to become resilient is taking care of yourself, whether that be working out, doing yoga, doing some mindful meditation, looking into active problem solving, going to a supervisor asking for help, making sure it's meaningful and purpose so that the feedback that you're getting back is actually there helping you. Social support, having family and friends to help support you during difficult times, and maintaining a positive outlook. You know, your mindset can make a world of difference when it comes to when you're dealing with stress in different areas. All of these things together can help you build resilience.
Good afternoon.
And now, I'm going to turn it over to Alden.
All right, thanks. Good afternoon. On this slide, we've shown some staff wellness interventions utilized by correctional agencies, nonprofits, and supervision agencies. Hopefully, your agency has access to them. If not, we strongly encourage you to work with your agencies and programs to integrate them into your workplace. Melinda, you put up the slide. Could you advance it to 17, please? Thank you. OPCA, as Bob indicated, recently trained 30 peer staff support specialists from 16 counties. Additionally, OPCA has created a peer support listserv and hosts quarterly meetings with peer team specialists to provide them with a platform to build knowledge, communicate training, information, and resources, as well as build a support network with their fellow team specialists. Establishing wellness programs improves morale, increases productivity, reduces absenteeism, and promotes higher job satisfaction. John Arden uses the acronym SEEDS to remind us of the 5 most powerful strategies to support emotional and physical well-being: social connections, exercise, education, diet, and sleep. To build resilience, we encourage you to consider strategies across each of these domains. In this section, we will focus on mindful strategies that have been demonstrating promising results in helping staff address workplace and family stress. Humans have thousands of thoughts each day. Most of us spend the vast majority of our time thinking about the past or the future. If this is all we do, we miss the knowledge and awareness that comes from the present moment. Our mind's tendency is to run on autopilot, doing one of 2 things: rehashing, thinking about the past, or rehearsing, worrying about the future. Mindfulness is a practice that helps us deepen our awareness without judgment, grounds us in the present, and powerfully impacts our brain and behavior. Mindfulness can occur in many different forms and can be a formal or informal process. It can take tremendous discipline and repetition. It is a process that needs to be practiced. We are in the early stages of validating the impact of mindfulness in within correctional populations. However, current research is very promising. The evidence base on mindfulness outcomes is most robust in the following disciplines: medicine, mental health treatment, specifically substance abuse, and trauma. It is now being used routinely in schools. The 3 R's, recognize, regulate, and respond, can help us reclaim our balance and focus so that we can be effective in a variety of situations, including those that involve high stress and crisis. They represent steps we can take to interrupt a reaction and cultivate a purposeful response. They are extremely portable. You can use them anytime and anywhere without anyone knowing. They are easy to implement and require a minimal amount of preparation. When we use the 3 R's, we can interrupt our own fight, flight, and freeze response and prepare ourselves to respond in a calm and more effective way. We also become the drivers of our behaviors. Instead of falling victim to overwhelming thoughts, feelings, sensations, or triggers, we also create opportunities to respond in new, more effective ways. Inserting the 3 R's into our day-to-day work will take some intention at first, but with consistent practice, using them will become natural. Next, we'll look at some simple strategies that you can use to make the 3 R's part of our response when faced with stress in our lives. The first R is recognize, noticing and acknowledging. Noticing involves taking a moment to be aware of our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations in the moment. This can be very helpful when we are in the midst of a stressful situation. You may notice a change of negative thoughts, a strong sensory experience, or a powerful emotion like anger, disgust, or fear. You might be overwhelmed or hurt. Regardless, noticing what you are experiencing in the moment is the first step toward an effective response. Acknowledging. Once we notice our experience in the moment, it's important to acknowledge it. Acknowledge any thoughts. For example, I'm thinking, I can't do this. Feelings. I am feeling anger, fear, and sensations. My muscles are tense and I'm feeling nauseous. Do this without any judgment. It is a simple statement of fact. I'm feeling very angry right now, and my thought is, I can't stand this person. It's okay that I'm thinking and feeling this way. My heart rate is faster, and I can feel myself getting hot. It's good. I'm aware of this now, and I can do something about it. By acknowledging your thoughts, you are validating that they exist. If you acknowledge your experiences without self-judgment, you are giving your stress response the signal that this is what is going on versus this should not be going on. The threat passes, and you can move toward an effective response to a stressful situation. Orienting involves making sure that we are in the present, focused on the situation we are in at that moment. Orienting can prevent us from bringing baggage from previous activities into the present moment. Human beings focus on thousands of experiences every day, and most of this happens unconsciously. Whenever we get up in the morning and glance outside to check the weather, we are orienting. When we enter a crowded room and scan for familiar faces, we are orienting. The key to orienting is to do it consciously and intentionally. Orienting involves intentionally focusing on something as a way to reactivate our inner brake, the PNS, so that we can be in the moment and complete a task. Imagine that you just had a frustrating conversation with a coworker. You feel tense and annoyed. As you head back to your office, you are told that a client is waiting for you. This is your first meeting, and you plan to interview him. Orienting will help you transition from that stressful state with your coworker to a calm state so that you can focus fully on the client. We can orient externally. Take a moment to pay attention to the environment that you are in. Notice the pictures on the wall or the configuration of the furniture. Try to orient on one thing, such as the ticking of a clock or the smell of food. Orient internally. You might take a minute to notice the colors you are wearing, or focus on a part of your body that feels less tense and more relaxed. The second R is regulate. This strategy involves taking steps to increase calm and reduce tension. There are a number of self-regulation techniques that stimulate the PNS relaxation response and brings us back into balance. They also help us to be effective across a range of activities and situations. Breathe. In many stressful situations, our breath is affected. This is not unusual. Most of us tend to hold our breath or take rapid and shallow breaths when we are feeling high levels of stress. When we take a deep breath, we are sending a signal to the brain that everything is okay. In fact, researchers have found that one of the most powerful techniques to manage stress and achieve regulation in the moment is to attend to our breath. For example, deep, full breaths can change how you look, your level of energy, and help you feel healthier and happier. You can create a more balanced nervous system if you practice breathing exercises, monitoring our breath at work, and intentionally deepening it and slowing it down a bit, especially in crisis. This can help us be much more effective in the moment. Grounding helps us stay anchored. Thank you. When we are grounded, we feel stable and balanced. We are less likely to be swept away by a trigger. Grounding is particularly useful in a crisis because you do not have to stop what you are doing. In fact, you can be actively engaged in the situation and grounding at the same time. Imagine that you are speaking with a client about why they refuse to go to work. They become agitated and start telling you all the things they can't stand about you. You feel your heart rate increase and notice that you are becoming angry. It's time to get grounded. There are several techniques you can use. We can feel contact with the ground beneath your feet, with your hips in the chair. You can create contact, lean against the back of your chair. Shift positions in a non-threatening manner. Bring energy into the body. Next slide, please. Thank you. The third R is respond with a purpose. Once we have taken steps to regulate and we are not being driven by overwhelming thoughts, emotions, or physical sensations, we are better able to take a fresh look at the situation, suspend judgment, and proceed with purpose. When we learn to monitor our thoughts and change judgments that evaluate self, others, or a situation as good or bad, worthwhile or not, valuable or not, we can alter how we feel and behave. This is particularly important in our work with justice-involved clients because there are a host of reasons that might explain a behavior. If we begin by judging their behavior, we run the risk of assuming our perception is fact, and we fail to identify the cause of the problem or how to best address it. One strategy that can help us stay regulated in the moment and proceed with purpose is a personal mission. Most of us are familiar with our agency's mission, which is important, but a strong sense of personal mission regarding our work is equally important. Creating calm involves using a statement, image, or behavior to regulate ourselves. Using calming statements and images or engaging in a quick calming behavior, for example, getting a drink of water, are simple ways to counteract intense emotions, thoughts, or physical sensations so that you can think more clearly. Imagine walking into a staff meeting to discuss a critical incident. You were one of 2 staff members involved and the other staff member is out sick. You notice that you immediately feel anxious. It may help to say to yourself, I am competent and I know how to communicate clearly. I can do this. This accurate dialogue can lead to a significant shift in your nervous system. You are sending a message to yourself and your nervous system that you are calm and in control. Next slide, please. Even when you know that someone is suffering from stress, it can be difficult to broach the subject. You might be scared of causing offense, making it worse, or causing the other person to become angry or emotional. The best approach for dealing with a stressed coworker is to acknowledge their stress. Talk to them in private, being tactful and sensitive. By simply mentioning the fact that he or she appears to have a full plate, you open an invitation for them to candidly talk about their stress. It will allow the internal pressure to release and for her or him to feel that you care. The objective is not to agree or justify the stress. It's simply to make the other person feel heard and understood. Without that step, any attempts to help reduce the stress might feel judgmental or condescending. However, keep in mind that they may not want to talk, in which case you'll need to respect their privacy. You can still let them know you're there for them if they ever want to talk. Don't get too involved. Your support will likely ease the burden of stress that your friend is feeling. But remember that your own reserves of time, capacity, capability, and even patience are finite too. Although stress isn't contagious, in the traditional sense, it can spread. There will only be so much that you can listen to, think about, and advise on without feeling overloaded by it all. You may find that it starts to drag you down. Eventually, it might even drive a wedge between you and your coworker if you're not careful. Next slide, please. Thank you. We are fortunate to have with us today Gladys Larson, New York State Probation Officers Association President and Senior Probation Officer from Tompkins County. Gladys will speak on the importance of professional wellness and peer support.
Hi, thank you for having me today. So I just kind of wanted to go over some things that I try to keep in mind when I'm thinking about my professional wellness. And you can see on my slide, it says, give yourself love, give yourself time, give yourself rest, give yourself grace, but don't ever give up because we need you. When I think about these statements, I think about what they actually mean to me. So for giving yourself love, I'm all about positive affirmations. I give myself positive affirmations. I give my coworkers, the people I work with. And the reason that I do that is because I want them to know the positives during the times that they're stressed and overwhelmed. And the same goes true for me. It's vital that we remember the good that we have done, especially during those times when we feel like we can't move on. I tell kids all the time when I work with them to write down a list of positive qualities. And they will ask me why I'm having them do that. And I tell them it's because it's easier to remember them if they're written down somewhere. If you forget, you can have it in your phone, you can have it on a piece of paper, just somewhere, so that you can see it and remember all the positive things that you're doing. So give yourself a little love. If you need a little help, reach out. I'll give you a little love. My office is full of positive affirmations and my coworkers can attest to that. Give yourself time. So find some joy. We all are dedicated to the work that we do, and we work really hard. But it's also important for us to remember what else brings us joy. Don't wait for there to be time to rest. Make time to rest. Stop hoarding your vacation time. Take a personal day when the sun is shining and you need to get out. But find something that makes you happy. It might be exercising, crafts, painting, baking, anything. Just something that brings you joy. Giving back to your community is a good thing. I recently did a training with the health department, and during that training, they talked about looking at your day like you have bookends. One bookend is the beginning of the day, and one bookend is the end of the day. You have control over how you start your day, and you have control over how you finish your day. We don't always have control over what happens in the middle. There's always a crisis. There's always another thing that we need to do, but we can control how we start our day. So start your day with intention. Say, this is 30 minutes for me before my day gets out of control. And then do the same thing at the end of the day. Take some time to relax and take time for you, and look at it like books on a bookshelf. You have your bookends. The next thing I always say is give yourself rest. Sleep is important to function. However, in order to sleep, we need to learn how to turn off our brain. I'm guilty of taking my work home with me and replaying things over and over in my head and thinking about how could I have done something different that would have changed the outcome. What I have learned, especially in the last 7 months, is that it's important to turn off work and not bring it home with you. I turn off the notifications on my email, on Teams, anything to do with work, because when I'm done, I need to be done. Everyone's different. You know yourself best and you know how to make it happen. But I know for me that if that phone dings and it's an email alert or it's a Teams chat, I'm going to look at it. So I need to turn it off. Another thing that I try to do is I allow myself to step away from my desk during the day. Take your lunch, maybe not at your desk every day, which I'm very guilty of. Go for a walk, but allow yourself some time to rest and allow yourself to turn your brain off. I recently worked for the last 7 months on COVID response in my county. And part of the task that I was given was to help the nurses and the staff at public health to learn how to take a break. They had been working on COVID for so many months, and it was obvious that they were becoming burnout and stressed. So I would set up activities, and I said to them, for 1 hour, we are not going to think about COVID. And the sense of relief in their face when they knew that they didn't have to think about COVID for an hour a day was amazing. I had my last day at the health department on Friday, and several of the nurses came up to me and thanked me for bringing fun back to work and for helping them to do something other than think about COVID for at least a little bit every day. Another thing that's real important is to give yourself grace. We are imperfect. We're human. We make mistakes. We're not always going to make the best decision, the right decision. And people aren't always going to agree with us, but it's okay. So give yourself some grace and remind yourself that you're human. When you're overwhelmed and you're upset and you're thinking of every bad decision that you've ever made, that's the time to look at the situation and point out what you did right in the situation, because I guarantee there was something that you did right. Acknowledge what you could have done better and learn from it. This is a great time to lean into your peer support. Tompkins County has been fortunate to have peer support for some time. And if I do say so myself, we have a pretty fabulous team. Peer support is important because they know what you do, they can empathize with you, and they can help you through situations. I utilize it. Sometimes I just go into peer support and I say, I've got a vent, whether it's I'm venting about a judge made a decision I didn't necessarily agree with, or whether there's that one person that I really thought had it under control this time and they didn't. And I'm feeling like, what could I have done different? And my peer support just listens and gives me feedback and reminds me that I'm human and that sometimes people make decisions and I can't control it and I don't have to always agree with it. But it's important to lean into that peer support because bottling things up is like shaking a bottle of soda. It's going to explode. So if you don't have peer support in your county, I would say find a coworker, a friend, or a family member that you trust. But it's important to vent and get it off your chest because you need to be at your best because everyone that we work with deserves us at our best. Our families deserve us at our best. And so it's important to let it all out whatever way you can. But don't give up because we need you. The work that we do is important. There will be bad days. We will experience and witness things that others will not ever understand, but that doesn't mean we give up. When I'm ready to give up, I think about my why. A couple years ago at a POA conference, I did a workshop with a coworker from Westchester County that was about remembering your why, remembering why you chose this profession. Most of us chose it for very different reasons. Not many of us, I think, go into this just because we think it sounds like a lot of fun. But my why is because I want to work hard to affect change in people. And if I give up, then that leaves somebody with no one to help them through a hard time. So I try to brush it off, the negative, and move forward because giving up is not an option because there are too many people left for us to help and affect change in. So remember to take care of yourselves, lean into your supports, and you can always reach out to your coworkers who understand the best. Thank you.
Gladys, thanks for those great words of wisdom. Certainly appreciate it. Life consists of career, family, friends, health, enjoyment, fulfillment, love, and more. You can't separate these out when considering your happiness and stress levels. We hope that this Lunch and Learn has provided you some tools and strategies to help you have long and satisfying careers. On the next slide, we have listed some additional resources for wellness. And if there's any questions, you can raise them in the chat, and we'd respond now. Okay, please list the resources again. There we go. Thank you again for attending today's Lunch and Learn. Feel free to contact any one of us if you have any questions. Please join us